In a place forgotten by maps, nestled between weary hills, there was a village. It was a place of deep silence. The houses were made of mud and wood, clinging to the earth as if afraid to stand too tall. Smoke curled from the chimneys in thin grey lines, the only sign of life against a pale sky. The people there did not sing. They did not laugh loudly. Their lives were a repeating pattern, like the quiet turning of the seasons. They were born, they worked the stubborn soil, and they grew old. There was no room for dreams in a place where survival was the only goal. Hope was a luxury they could not afford, a word they had long forgotten how to speak. On a day like any other, a child was born. His name was Tom. He arrived without a sound, his eyes wide and watchful even in his first moments. The silence of the village seemed to seep into his very bones, but it did not settle there. Instead, it became a blank page upon which his mind would write its own story. His mother held him close, her heart heavy with the familiar weight of a difficult life. She looked into his dark, curious eyes and felt a flicker of something she could not name. It was not hope, not exactly. It was something more like a question, a puzzle that had just been placed in her hands. As Tom grew, the silence of the village shaped him, but it did not define him. While other children played simple games in the dust, Tom watched the world with an unnerving focus. He saw the way a spider spun its web, a perfect geometric pattern of life and death. He noticed the path the sun took across the sky, marking the passage of time with shadows that lengthened and shortened. The world was not just a series of events to him. It was a complex machine, and he longed to understand how every piece fit together. His mind was a quiet, busy place, full of questions that the villagers had never thought to ask. The village existed in a state of muted acceptance. People did not question why the harvests were poor or why the winters were so long. They simply endured. But Tom could not accept things as they were. He would sit for hours, arranging pebbles into intricate patterns, trying to understand the logic of numbers. He would watch the birds and wonder about the mechanics of flight. His curiosity was a bright, sharp light in a world of shadows. It set him apart, making him an island of thought in a sea of quiet resignation. The village was his home, yet he was not truly a part of it. He was an observer, a mind awakening in a world that was fast asleep. Tom's intelligence did not go unnoticed for long. It began with small things. He learned to speak with a clarity and vocabulary that was far beyond his years. While other children struggled with simple words, Tom spoke in full sentences, asking questions that made the adults uncomfortable. He would point to the moon and ask not what it was, but why it changed its shape. He would look at the river and wonder where the water came from and where it was going. These were not the questions of a child from the village. They were the questions of an outsider, and they made the villagers uneasy. They did not have the answers, and they did not like being reminded of what they did not know. The unease soon turned to suspicion. The villagers began to whisper when Tom walked by. They saw his quiet observations not as curiosity, but as a strange and unsettling watchfulness. He did not play their games. He did not join in their simple routines. He was always on the edge, thinking, calculating. They called him the Watcher. They said he had old eyes in a young face. The other children, sensing the adults' fear, avoided him. They would stop their games and fall silent when he approached, their laughter dying on their lips. Tom was alone, surrounded by people but completely isolated by the very thing that made him special. His parents did not know what to do. They loved their son, but they also feared the whispers. They tried to make him like the other children. "Go and play, Tom," his father would say, his voice gentle but firm. "Don't just sit and think." But Tom could not stop thinking any more than he could stop breathing. He would try to join the others, but the world of their games seemed slow and illogical to him. He saw the flaws in their rules, the inefficiencies in their movements. He was a visitor in his own childhood, a traveller in a land whose language of simplicity he could not speak. The whispers grew louder, turning from suspicion to fear. Some said he was cursed. Others said he was not human at all. The village, with its rigid and unchanging ways, had no place for someone like Tom. Difference was a threat, and Tom was the most different person they had ever known. His intelligence, which should have been a gift, had become a wall between him and everyone he knew. He was a puzzle they could not solve, and so they decided he was a problem that needed to be removed. The silence of the village was no longer peaceful. It was heavy with judgment. One day they came. They were not from the village. They wore clean white coats and drove a vehicle that moved without a horse, humming with a strange power. They spoke to the village elders in low, serious tones, using words the villagers did not understand. They spoke of potential, of progress, of a special purpose. They pointed at Tom, who was watching them from a distance, his mind racing to understand. The elders, relieved to have a solution to their problem, nodded in agreement. They gave Tom away without a second thought. It was, they believed, for the good of the village. Tom did not cry as they led him away. He simply watched, his mind already analysing, memorising every detail. Tom's new home was a room. It was a perfect cube, and everything in it was white. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the bed, the desk, all were a sterile, shadowless white. There were no windows to the outside world. The only light came from panels in the ceiling that glowed with a soft, constant brightness. There was no day or night, only the unending whiteness. The scientists who had taken him became his new family, his teachers, his keepers. They gave him puzzles, books, and complex machines to study. They measured his progress, recorded his every word, and marvelled at the speed of his mind. He learned faster than they could have ever imagined. He absorbed entire libraries of information, mastering advanced mathematics, physics, and engineering before he was even a teenager. His mind was a sponge, and the scientists provided an endless ocean of knowledge. They taught him, but they did not talk to him about feelings. They did not speak of love or sadness or the village he had left behind. They treated him like a precious experiment, a brilliant mind to be cultivated, but not a person to be known. He lived in a world of pure logic, a sterile environment designed to nurture his intellect and starve his heart. In the White Room, Tom grew into a young man. His body was lean, his movements precise. His mind was a universe of its own, capable of building theoretical machines and solving impossible equations. He could design systems that could reshape the world, all within the confines of his own head. Yet he knew nothing of the world outside his white walls. He did not know the feeling of rain on his skin or the warmth of the sun. He had no friends, only observers. His humanity was a distant memory, a faint echo from a silent village he could barely recall. He was a genius in a cage, a king of an empty white kingdom. As Tom's mind expanded, so did his curiosity about his own existence. The scientists had told him he was special, that he was part of an important project for the future of humanity. But their answers were always vague, clinical, and unsatisfying. He began to notice inconsistencies in their stories, small gaps in the data they provided him. Using the computers he had long since mastered, he started his own secret investigation. He bypassed their security systems with ease, his fingers flying across holographic keyboards. He moved like a ghost through their digital archives, searching for the one file they had kept hidden from him, the one labeled with his own name. He found it buried deep within a protected server, locked behind layers of encryption that were designed to be unbreakable. But Tom's mind saw patterns where others saw only chaos. He dismantled the firewalls one by one, peeling back the layers of secrecy until the truth was laid bare before him. He read about the silent village. He saw images of the mud huts and the weary faces of the people. He read the scientists' reports, which described him not as a student, but as a specimen. They had identified a rare genetic marker in his bloodline, a potential for unparalleled cognitive function, and they had simply taken him. The discovery did not come as a sudden shock. It was more like the slow, cold dread of a truth he had always known on some subconscious level. He was not a volunteer. He was a prisoner. His entire life, his education, his purpose, it was all a lie, a carefully constructed experiment. The White Room was not a school. It was a laboratory. The scientists were not his mentors, they were his captors. The anger that rose in him was cold and sharp, a feeling as precise and powerful as one of his own equations. It was an anger born not of passion, but of pure, calculated logic. They had taken his life, and he would take it back. Escape became his new project. He planned it with the same meticulous detail he used to solve a physics problem. He used his knowledge to build devices from the components in his room, small, silent tools of liberation. He created a localized electromagnetic pulse to disable the cameras. He built a device that could override the electronic locks on his door. He moved with a quiet, determined purpose, his every action calculated for maximum efficiency. One night, when the facility was at its quietest, he put his plan into motion. The door to his White Room slid open, and for the first time in his life, Tom stepped out of his cage into the unknown darkness of the world beyond. Tom's escape was not just from a building, it was an escape from the present. In a hidden sub-level of the facility, he found their greatest secret, a prototype time machine. It was a crude experimental vessel, a sphere of gleaming metal and wires that hummed with a dangerous energy. The scientists had only theorized about its potential, but Tom saw its design with perfect clarity. He understood its mechanics, its risks, its incredible power. With the facility's alarms now screaming behind him, he did not hesitate. He entered the sphere, sealed the hatch, and activated the sequence. The world outside dissolved into a blur of light and color. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a ghost, adrift in the river of time. His first journeys were chaotic and uncontrolled. He hurtled through history, a spectator to moments he had only read about in books. He saw the building of pyramids and the fall of empires. He witnessed plagues and wars, triumphs and tragedies. But he was not a historian. He was a man fueled by a cold, burning rage. His goal was not to observe, but to find the people who had wronged him, the scientists, the village elders, the architects of his stolen life. He learned to control the machine, to pinpoint specific moments in time with terrifying accuracy. He became a hunter, and the past was his hunting ground. His quest for revenge began. He moved through time like a phantom, subtly altering events. He found the lead scientist as a young, ambitious student and anonymously leaked a flawed theory that would ruin his career before it began. He visited the village elders in their youth, creating small misfortunes that would steer their lives away from positions of power. He was a whisper in the past, a shadow that caused ripples to spread forward through time. Each act of vengeance brought a moment of cold satisfaction, but it did not fill the emptiness inside him. It only made him feel more isolated, more detached from the humanity he had never truly known. But, time is not a straight line that can be easily redrawn. It's actually a fragile, interconnected web. Tom's small changes created unforeseen consequences. A world saved from one disaster fell into another. A life he altered for the worse caused suffering for countless others. Reality began to fray at the edges. Paradoxes flickered in and out of existence. He saw alternate versions of himself, ghostly echoes created by his meddling. He was powerful enough to break the world, but he was beginning to understand that he did not have the wisdom to fix it. His revenge was not just destroying his enemies, it was threatening to unravel the very fabric of existence. In one of his jumps, aiming to prevent the funding for the laboratory that had imprisoned him, Tom's ship was damaged. It crashed violently in a time and place he did not recognize, a city of gleaming towers and flying vehicles far in the future. The sphere was broken, its energy core failing. He was stranded. He emerged from the wreckage into a world that was as alien to him as his white room had been to the outside. It was in this state of vulnerability, for the first time truly helpless, that he met Elena. She was a mechanic, a woman who worked with her hands, her face smudged with grease and her eyes full of a kindness he had never seen before. Elena was not afraid of him or his strange broken machine. She saw not a dangerous enigma, but a person in need of help. She offered him food and shelter without asking for anything in return. For the first time, someone spoke to him not as a subject or a threat, but as a person. She listened to his story, her expression patient and understanding. She did not judge him for his anger or his quest for revenge. Instead, she showed him simple acts of compassion. She taught him how to laugh, a sound that felt foreign and clumsy in his own throat. She showed him the beauty in small, imperfect things, a sunset, a shared meal, a quiet conversation. Her kindness was an anchor in the storm of his life. It slowly began to ground him, to pull him back from the cold, logical abyss he'd fallen into. He spent his days with her, helping her in her workshop. He who could design theoretical engines in his mind learned the simple, satisfying work of fixing a real one with his own hands. He learned the value of patience, of collaboration, of trust. Elena's world was not one of grand theories and calculated outcomes. It was a world of tangible connections, of helping others, of finding joy in the present moment. It was a world he had never known, and it began to heal him. With Elena, Tom started to feel the stirrings of his own buried humanity. The cold fire of his vengeance began to cool, replaced by a different kind of warmth. He realized that his intellect, his power, had only brought him isolation and pain. Elena's simple, honest humanity had given him more peace in a few weeks than he had ever known. He saw that true strength was not in the ability to control and manipulate, but in the ability to connect and to care. His heart, which he had treated as a useless illogical organ, was slowly coming back to life. He was no longer just a mind. He was beginning to feel like a person. Together, they began the slow, difficult work of repairing the time machine. It was a fusion of two worlds. Tom brought his unparalleled theoretical knowledge, his understanding of temporal physics and quantum mechanics. Elena brought her practical genius, her intuitive grasp of machinery, and her patient, resourceful hands. She was not intimidated by the ship's complexity. To her, it was just another engine that needed fixing. They worked side by side in her workshop, the hum of advanced diagnostics mixing with the clatter of simple wrenches. It was a partnership, a true collaboration, something Tom had never experienced before. As they worked, they talked. Tom spoke of his past, of the White Room and the cold anger that had driven him. Elena spoke of her own life, of her belief that everyone deserved a second chance. She did not see his desire to change the past as pure revenge. She saw it as a wounded person's cry for justice, a desperate attempt to prevent others from suffering the same fate. She suggested a new purpose for the mended ship. Instead of using it to punish those who had hurt him, they could use it to make small, careful changes, to save people, to prevent tragedies, to nudge history onto a kinder path. Their goal was ambitious and fraught with danger. Tom knew better than anyone the risks of altering the past. But Elena's vision was different from his. It was not about grand, sweeping changes or the pursuit of a perfect world. It was about small acts of compassion extended across time. They would not be conquerors of history, but its quiet gardeners, tending to it with care. They planned their interventions with meticulous detail, studying the potential consequences, choosing moments where a small push could avert a great deal of suffering without unraveling the timeline. Their mission was no longer about vengeance. It was about hope. When the ship, which they now called the Anchor, was finally ready, it was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of their shared purpose. They took their first journey together, not as a hunter and a bystander, but as partners. They travelled to the brink of a preventable industrial disaster and left an anonymous warning. They guided a brilliant but overlooked scientist toward a life-saving discovery. Each mission was a delicate dance with history, a careful balancing act. They were not erasing the past darkness, but lighting small candles within it, hoping to illuminate a better way forward for those who would come after. The responsibility they had taken on was immense. Every journey into the past was a heavy burden. Tom found himself constantly at war with his own instincts. The cold, logical part of his mind, the part forged in the White Room, urged him toward efficiency and control. It whispered that the easiest way to fix the world was to take charge of it, to impose a perfect order. The desire for revenge still lingered, a cold echo in his soul. He would see opportunities to punish the descendants of his captors or to erase the foundations of the organization that had created him. The temptation to use his power for selfish reasons was a constant battle. Elena was his guide, his conscience. When he wrestled with his darker impulses, she would remind him of their true purpose. She would speak of the people they were helping, of the individual lives they were saving. She reminded him that a world controlled by one person, no matter how brilliant or well-intentioned, was just another kind of cage. Love, she insisted, was about setting things free. not controlling them. Her unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity, in the power of free will, kept him from succumbing to the lure of becoming a dictator of time, a benevolent god ruling over a world of his own making. Their work was not without its costs. They saw the worst of history, the deepest cruelties, and the most profound sorrows. The weight of the knowledge they carried was crushing. Tom saw the faces of people he could not save, tragedies that were too large or too pivotal to prevent without causing even greater chaos. The paradoxes he had once created still flickered at the edges of his perception, ghosts of timelines that should not be. He struggled with the godlike power he wielded, a power no single human was ever meant to have. The strain began to show on him, in the haunted look in his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. One day they faced an impossible choice. A catastrophic event was looming in Elena's timeline, one that would destroy her entire city. Tom calculated the variables and saw only one way to stop it: a drastic alteration to the past that would erase the timeline in which he and Elena had ever met. To save her world, he would have to lose her forever. The cold logic of his past screamed at him to make the sacrifice. But the new human part of him, the part that Elena had awakened, refused. He could not erase the one person who had taught him how to be human. He had to find another way. In that moment of crisis, Tom finally made his choice. He would not sacrifice Elena. He would not control the past. He would save her here and now. Using his vast knowledge, he designed and built a massive atmospheric shield around the city, a feat of engineering that should have been impossible. He did not alter the past. He used his genius to protect the present. It was an act not of manipulation, but of creation and defense. It was his final rejection of vengeance and his ultimate embrace of love. The shield held, the city was saved, and Eleanor was safe by his side. But the effort took its toll, burning out the core of the anchor and ending their journeys through time forever. They settled into a quiet life in the saved city. The world did not know of the silent guardian who lived among them. Tom, the boy who could defy time, chose to live within it. He hid his incredible knowledge, not because he was afraid, but because he had learned that humanity had to find its own way. True progress could not be given. It had to be earned. He saw that his role was not to be a ruler or a savior, but a teacher. He began to share his knowledge, not in grand pronouncements, but in small, quiet ways. He would mentor young students, anonymously publish papers that push science in the right direction, and guide innovators toward ethical choices. Years passed. Tom grew old, a process he had once thought he could outsmart. He saw the lines appear on his face and felt his body slow down. He did not fear it. He welcomed it as the natural course of a life fully lived. He found a profound peace in his mortality, in the simple, shared moments with Elena. His life, which had begun in silence and isolation, was now filled with the warmth of love and the quiet satisfaction of purpose. He had once held the power to reshape worlds, but he found greater joy in holding Elena's hand as they watched the sunset. In his final days, Tom was a man at peace. He had journeyed through all of time only to discover that the most important moments were the ones spent in the here and now. His legacy was not in the timelines he had altered, but in the knowledge he had passed on and the example he had set. He had learned that the greatest power was not in controlling the future, but in trusting it. He had been a boy who defied time, a ghost who haunted history, and a god who could break reality. But in the end, he chose to simply be a man. And in that choice, he found his truest and most lasting victory. He was a guardian who had finally earned his rest.
The one who chose love. When Tom died, the universe did not collapse, time did not break, reality did not scream. It simply continued. Somewhere far beyond human understanding, time adjusted, quietly, respectfully, around the life of one man who could have ruled everything, but chose to protect it instead. And in that endless ocean of moments, Tom became what he was always meant to be. Not a god, not a weapon, but a story, told across time itself. Far beneath layers of reality, the resonance softened, settled, and faded further into the fabric of existence. Tom's imprint did not need to act anymore. It had done what no machine, no law, no god ever could. It had taught the universe how to say enough. And so the story closed in the only way a true story ever does. Not with an ending, but with continuity. Somewhere, a child would always be born curious but kind. Somewhere, knowledge would always meet wisdom. Somewhere, love would interrupt control, and time, endless and aware, would continue forward. Not as a master, not as a prison, but as a shared journey. That was Tom's legacy. Not written in books, not carved in monuments, but carried quietly by every moment that chose humanity over power. And even that legacy was not the final ripple, because time does not only remember actions, it remembers intentions. In the immeasurable depth where all timelines overlap, faint traces of alternate possibilities still existed. Worlds that never fully formed, futures that almost were. They drifted like unfinished thoughts. Most faded naturally, a few resisted. One such echo carried a version of Tom that never met Elena, a version that chose revenge completely, a version that ruled time instead of releasing it. That echo did not become a universe, but it did not disappear either. It watched, not with eyes, with comparison. And in watching the path that was chosen, the restraint, the love, the quiet protection, it weakened. Control, it learned, was heavier than freedom. Power was lonelier than limitation. Eternity without connection was emptier than death. Slowly, even that echo dissolved. Time, at last, had no regrets. From then on, causality flowed without resistance. Paradoxes lost their teeth. The universe no longer needed safeguards or guardians or imprints. It had absorbed the lesson fully. Existence became lighter. Civilizations learned faster, not technologically, but emotionally. Conflict still existed, loss still hurt, death still came. But never again did intelligence outrun empathy so far that time itself had to intervene. And somewhere, perhaps nowhere, if meaning could take form, it rested. Not as Tom, not as Elena, not as humanity, but as balance. So if one day you feel a pause before a dangerous choice, if curiosity suddenly shares space with compassion, if power feels less tempting than connection, that is not coincidence. That is time remembering a poor, quiet child who was never meant to change everything, only to show that everything did not need to be changed. And with that understanding, the universe continues, open, unfinished, alive, and listening. Because the universe never stops listening. Every thought, every hesitation, every moment where a hand chooses to help instead of harm sends a small vibration through reality. Most fade instantly, some align. And when they align, time leans forward, curious but calm, no longer afraid of what minds might become. There is no throne at the center of existence, no final observer, no hidden ruler, only accumulation of choices, of restraint, of love repeated often enough to matter. Tom's story was never unique because of time travel or genius or black holes. It was unique because when given absolute power, he chose something fragile, temporary, human. And that choice echoed longer than any machine ever could. So the universe remains open-ended, not perfect, not safe, but honest. Stars will still explode, people will still make mistakes, curiosity will still push boundaries, but somewhere between impulse and action, there will always be a breath, a pause just long enough to remember that control is not the same as purpose. That pause is the final gift. And if this story ever feels like it ends, it's only because you reached a moment where it continues without being told. Because time does not need witnesses anymore. It has learned how to trust. Under the endless sky, Tom and Eleanor finally stood together. Not as rulers, not as guardians, not even as travelers, but simply as two humans who had learned the value of choice, love, and letting go. The stars above twinkled like silent applause, each one a reminder that life, in all its fragility, was still worth protecting. We did it. We let time be human, and that's enough. Together they walked forward into a world rebuilt not by force or fear, but by patience, compassion, and courage, the kind that anyone could choose to carry. A world where future generations could grow, dream, and love, without being stolen from, without being used. And in that moment, the story finally found peace. Thank you for joining Tom's journey through time, love, and adventure. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel to follow more incredible adventures like this one. Your support keeps these stories alive. And if you want to help even more, you can also support us on Ko-fi. Every little bit helps us bring even bigger, bolder tales to life. Remember, every choice matters, every moment counts. And with your support, our stories will continue to travel across time and hearts alike. The end for now.